What's going on, folks? Hoops fans out here, sports fans. We got another banger for you today. We have a legend into the building that most might know about, but guess what? You're getting ready to know him. So go ahead, sit back, relax. We got you covered in the bird cage on the Perch edition. Let's go.
Okay, y'all, this is it.
What's going on, man? We're back. We got K-Dub in the building tonight, helping out with this legendary interview we have tonight with Mr. Wali Jones, bro. What do you look to get into with Mr. Jones tonight, man? What are you looking to get out of this interview with this legendary figure of the NBA?
What I'm looking to get out of it is his intellect and his insight and his basketball IQ from playing back in the 60s and the early 70s and things of that nature back in the day. I mean, I'm a big basketball fan from the 80s and moving forward, but I'm looking for him to enlighten me on more of the players that came before me and paved the way for the guys that we watch today, like the LeBrons and the ADs and the Trey Youngs and all that and that nature of what's playing in today's game. You know, to give respect, you got to give respect to the guys that came before you. So that's what I want to get into tonight, get into his life, his backstory, his career, and the coaches and the players that he played with in his career.
Man, and here's the thing. When you look at Philly, it's a mecca of hoopers. You got to go back. It's not just Wilt. You got to look at Earl the Pearl Monroe. Rest in peace to Mr. Hank Gathers. And also, I went to an event recently. He invited me. He was so gracious, and it was just an honor to be among legends in that event. We got to go to the Delaware Sports Hall of Fame, where his brother, not friend, that is his brother, that's his family, Mr. Walt Hazard, was inducted into the Delaware Hall of Fame. His son came all the way out from LA over to Philly. It was just one of the things that it was just great to see. And then legend, it was so many legends in the building. Former Atlanta Hawk Ollie Johnson was in the building, and some HBCU legends. Sonny Hill, one of the legends, legends of the game, was in that place talking about Mr. Walt Hazard. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in Mr. Wali Wonder Jones into the cage on the Perch. What's going on, Mr. Jones? Welcome to the Perch.
Well, I'm happy to be on the Perch. First off, I love your introduction. The bird cage sounds good, man. It's good to be in here, and we can get on with it because people don't know when we talk about history, it's so important about legends. We made this game, and I'm glad these guys are making all that money. But you guys can get into it wherever you want to start off. Young man, your name again?
That's K.
I know Ryan.
K. How you doing? I'm K-Dub, aka Killian, but K-Dub on the show. Okay.
Oh, I like that. I like that. K-Dub. Well, I'm Wali Wonder. You remember that? Wali Wonder. Don't forget that. All right, K-Dub.
You Wali Wonder and I'm K-Dub. Let's go.
All
And I'm
right.
about to bring the history as I always do, the historian. So let's get to it. Mr. Jones. Thank you, K-Dub. So
Just
Mr.
call me
Jones.
Wali.
So Wally.
Wali's
So let's go
good.
ahead and talk about it. When you sit back and look at not just Philly legends, I'm gonna start off like this. You guys are known for a tough, gritty game, and it's not just basketball. Philly athletes play with heart, soul, passion, and it's just different. Getting back to you being born and raised in Philly and going to one of the best high school programs around for hoopers, what got you into basketball and how did you get started and what was life like starting off in Philadelphia?
Well, starting off in Philadelphia, I was so fortunate to have a wonderful mother, Dorothea Jones, and my dad, Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones went to the same high school as I went to, Overbrook High School, and that's where he met my mother. My mother was father and mother were from Ohio, where they went to Wilberforce College. I'm sure you've heard of that in Ohio. Where they came to Philadelphia, and during those times they weren't able to teach. So a lot of my background goes about what my parents and grandparents went through when they came to Philadelphia. It wasn't easy for African Americans, and as my father would say, Negroes. I'm going to give you a thing on that because Muhammad Ali said people from Japan, the Japanese, Chinese, Irish, and all like that. Where's Negro from? So that's where we get into the term of Black history, because we begin to find out our history early in my life about being from Africa. We did not have Black history when I went to Overbrook High School. So when I learned a lot from my father and the grandparents about what it was like to grow up in different parts of the United States, especially in Ohio and Philly, where they were from, I learned a lot about what we had to go through. So being from a family of 9, I had brothers. My brother Bob won championship at Overbrook High School. My brother Bob was MVP of the city championship game. He was in the Eastern League. But before he got there, I'll give you a story, and I think it's very important. My brother went to A&T. A lot of the great athletes from Philadelphia weren't going to Villanova, LaSalle, St. Joe, the Big Five, Penn. They didn't go. Temple. They weren't recruiting. They only had 1 or 2 African Americans on those teams when I was growing up. And I'm chronologically gifted. When I say I'm gifted, back in the 50s, when I went to school, I graduated in February. We had already won 2 championships. And in February, I went to prep school, Temple Prep. And I went to Temple Prep because I wanted to prepare myself to go to college because I did have an older brother that went to college. But my father taught me a lot about Philadelphia. He was barnstorming with baseball, Negro baseball leagues. They weren't allowed to play baseball. They allowed the other Jewish ball players to play in high school. The best athletes at Overbrook were African American baseball players. But I started out being a hardball player from 10, 11, 12. And my father was the one I watched barnstorm all over Philadelphia. He barnstormed in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, playing baseball. So they knew my pop as a great baseball player. He could have played over in Mexico or other countries, but as I said before, I'm from a family of 9. So one of the things that I learned very early was my mother told me about reading, which is very important in our life, about reading. So important. My father was well-versed, well-read, 33rd degree Mason. Passed away at 107 this year in December, right after his birthday. But a lot of things he told me about Philadelphia where you couldn't cross Market Street. Jobs weren't available, so his 4 brothers made sure he graduated from high school and bought him a suit to make sure he would graduate from Overbrook. All his brothers were part of the Pacific Theater, Korean War, Second World War, where my uncles were police officers. The Korean War, where they were the Red Ball Express. My uncle drove trucks to have supplies in the Korean War. So his brothers was like Saving Private Ryan. My grandmother told them they didn't want my father to go to war in any of the wars. So he worked at the shipyard in Philadelphia. And the atrocities he went through as I'm going to say the word again, because he tells me men of color or Negro. He said the way they treated him down there was just terrible. And he created his own business of interior, exterior decorating. And he worked for a Jewish real estate company where all my brothers, we all worked for that company. So he taught me a trade, interior and exterior decorating. So that gives you a little background about me. My other brother, Bill, went to Denver University because of Billy Cunningham. He's a championship ball player from West Philly High School, where he won a championship and city championship. My younger brother, and Billy Cunningham was the one who got him a scholarship to go to Denver University, where he became dean of students at George Washington High. And he actually went to the school and taught where Chauncey Billups went. Also, my sisters, the two retired teachers, one went to University of Pittsburgh. I have another sister retiring from being a special education with West Philly High School. I had another sister, Frances, who passed away, unfortunately. She's a librarian. My other sister, Jeanette, went to University of Pittsburgh, and she taught at Sister Claire Muhammad School, and then she taught in the public school system until she just retired a couple of years ago. So that gives you a little background about my family, about my brothers. My oldest brother was Army, Central High School, very intelligent. Two of my brothers passed away early. Three of them passed away early. But that's sort of my family. And that's what got me into basketball was my brother Bob. At 12 years old, he took me to Haddington, and Blinky Brown would have us play in leagues all over the city, 12, 13, 14 years old. And sort of something that prepared me for being a ball player was seeing the Wilts, Guy Rogers, Tom Golas, Hal Lears, the New York ball players. Jackie Jackson would come in town, the Czar, Cleo Hills from Newark, was one of the great Winston-Salem ball players that played for the Hawks. So I had a chance to experience looking at guys like Woody Salisbury, Andy Johnson, Globetrotters, the Celtics, the Warriors. So I was around professionals. But what Will Chamberlain did for us in high school was tell us this, which is very important. Scholar athlete. Will Chamberlain was a Renaissance man. Very intelligent, had his own jazz show in Kansas. Very intelligent. They weren't allowing a lot of blacks at Kansas either. You have to be aware of what's happening when I grew up in the 50s and what happened with the African-American ball players during that time. So I'll stop there because I wanted you to get a little background about my family and about how we got to be ball players was recreation centers. That was a safe haven. And then, you know, the New York versus Philly, every year, high school, college, pro, I went to play against the best in the Rutgers, DC, the Metro League, Morristown, Camden, Virginia. It wasn't AAU. They took the best out of Philly all the way from your middle school up to pro to play against the best all on the East Coast. So that's sort of my background, but I want to stop there because you guys may have some questions.
Man, you when you talk about those battles, because we're gonna get into your college career and things of that sort. Out for the folks that are out here, I'm gonna tell you just like this. When you talk about Philadelphia, now I've lived here for some time. The two things that are critical in this city, it's a heartbeat: basketball and boxing. Those two sports.
Oh,
This is their mecca right here. You got to be, if you're not hooping, you throwing hands. One of the two. That's just what it is. And they tell you that.
yeah, it's the truth. You know, I knew a lot of the boxers. Of course, I knew Muhammad Ali very closely because we did a lot of community things, not only in Philly, but in Virginia, where I lived in Virginia when I left the Milwaukee Bucks. When I played for the Milwaukee Bucks, I bought a home in College Park, Virginia, because of Bobby Dandridge. Kitten Hayward, Bernard Hopkins. I could name a lot of boxers that, of course, ball players. We hung around with some of the greatest boxers, baseball, Richie Allen from the Phillies, one of the few blacks, again, I have to make sure people know history because there weren't that many African Americans even on the Phillies. And then Tim Brown, Bob Brown. There's so many great Eagles. Nate Ramsey, Lane Howe. I knew a lot of
Hold
great
up.
Leroy Keys that were great football players because we all hung together during those
Mr.
times in the
Jones,
60s.
I need you to talk a little bit more about Bob Brown. I'm gonna let K Dub ask some questions. See, we're a football show, but see, I've told people about Big Bob Boomer Brown, and I told a story about him being in Philly, one of the most dominant offensive linemen who ever played this game, and people don't know that he was pretty much a chemistry major at Nebraska, highly intelligent. And literally on the football field, you just didn't cross him. You just didn't cross him.
You didn't, when the greatest I'm talking about Eagles, but I got a guy that maybe people that are a little older may know, the Minister of Defense. Anybody know his name?
Reggie White.
Oh yeah, we know
There you
about that.
go.
Come on now.
Well, Bob Brown was
We
before
tried to get
Reggie
him in
White.
free agency. Shoot.
Well, Bob Brown was was before Reggie White. But I'm saying comparisons to great players. They had some great players back when I was there. Tommy McDonald, wide receiver, Pete Retzlaff, Tim Brown, Leroy. I knew those guys personally, but matter of fact, Tim Brown was an artist that did a couple of portraits of me when I was playing for the 76ers. Little wide receiver, Tommy McDonald. A lot of people won't recall that back in the day when they won the championship in the 60s. But
he played for the Falcons for 1 year.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay. You got some history there,
right? He
right?
played for the Falcons early. When we first came out into the league, he was expanded. The expansion draft, as you know, when Atlanta and New Orleans got teams, he was one of the first Falcons that was there, right along with Tommy Nobis. But you just threw some history out there when you talked about some of those names.
Oh yeah, I'll give you some examples. Clarence Peaks and Tim Brown, they also played ball. So there are a lot of guys that were football players that come down to the playground and play ball. I'm trying to I'm trying to think of for the Raiders, he was in town. What is his name? He was a wide receiver. Pardon me?
No, you say he was a wide receiver. He played in the 60s, right?
He played with the Raiders, but he was our pal. I'm trying to think of his name, but there were guys that actually. Pardon me?
Was it Art Wells?
No, it was. I can't think of his name at the time, but I'm just giving you a little background on how in the community at rec centers we would be able to see some of the great athletes that were not only football players, basketball players, track, that were right there in our community. So I had a chance to observe that. But getting back to basketball, that was the big thing in Philly when New York would come down and play against the best in Philly. I'm not talking about the New York versus Philly. They would just come down and play ball. Guys from New York would come down and just play it. People are not aware that Bill Bradley, who I played against when he was at Princeton, drafted by the Knicks, he played with me in the Baker League. Bobby Hunter with the Globetrotters came from New York and played in the Baker League. Fly Williams played for the St. Louis Spirits in the ABA. He played on the same team that I played on, that we won the championship my last year in the Baker League in '76. Jelly Bean Bryant, World Be Free, Mike Dunleavy. So the Baker League was sort of a training ground every summer because everybody on my team that played for the Sixers played on other teams during the summer. Al Greer played on the team, Earl Monroe, Archie Clark, Billy Cunningham. We all were all on different teams, but we all kept our craft by playing all summer. So I'll stop there because you may have some other questions.
Yeah, Mr. Wali, it's good to
Hold up. Before you ask that question, I think I know who you're talking about. So the guy you were speaking on, Art Powell, right? Right.
That's him
for the Raiders. Okay. I had to think about that for a second, but go ahead, K-Dub. It was just burning me.
He can play, man. He can play ball. Yeah.
All right. Art Powell. That's what's up. Hey man, you was connected back in the day. That's what it sounds like. In your day, you was connected to the best of the best and the brightest out there in the sports world. If you was hanging out with all the boxers, track athletes, and basketball players and football players alike. It just sounds like you were the man to be with, to hang with. I don't know. That just feels what it sounds like.
That's what it was. You know, when you're an athlete, you not only, entertainers, professionals, movie stars, people at the game, just like it is when you see the Lakers, people came out to our game. And people don't realize that when you have a Wilt Chamberlain, it's like coming to see LeBron. Everybody wants to see a LeBron, but everybody wants to see Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, phenomenal athlete. One of the greatest, if not the greatest individual ball player. I'm going to give you that again, because in my book, Black Champion Challenge American Sports, which Jim Marsh and I co-authored, McKay Publishers, we wrote about the history of African-American athletes back in the 1800s. And the book came out in 71. And Jim and I was giving knowledge to jockeys, fencers, boxers, baseball, soccer, hockey players that were Black. But what was so controversial when I got traded to the Milwaukee Bucks and changed my name to Wali, W-A-L-I, each chapter had before it about the lynchings. And see, I want to talk about that because it's very controversial, because they want to take away the history of what happened to us. And in our book, it talked about how they lynched people in the 1800s. It even talked about when I lived in San Antonio. I didn't realize this later on in my life that they had lynched soldiers, Black soldiers in Texas, soldiers for the United States. And people have to do research on that, because Earl Monroe and I would talk all the time about how you read. See, we were 4-year college. We read a lot. James Baldwin, Richard Wright, authors. I mean, you're not out always partying. We going over somebody's house playing chess, listening to jazz, and talking about what's happening in history, because we were well versed. We were well read. So a lot of people don't understand that a lot of us, when we changed our names again, because we found out more about our history. I had over 100 guys that changed their names. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was one of the most noted, but then they called Jamal, Jabali. I could name 100 ball players. My brother, Mahab Abdul Rahman, Walt Hazard. But we would learn about where we came from and our heritage. And I even talked to my father about it, because I wanted to honor him. My name is Walter Madison Jones, but I changed my name to Abdul Wali Kimya. Now, when I went to Milwaukee, it was a controversy. Death threats. We're not allowed to have one Muslim here, and that is Kareem. I don't know if y'all are aware what happened to him with his advisor, his Amir. They were killed in Washington, D.C. See, it's history. It's history. I met Muhammad.
Black Brothers Incorporated were the ones who did it. So if y'all don't know anything about that book, you need to get it. They were out of Temple 12 over in Philadelphia.
There you go.
Oh yeah,
Brian. Remember now? I'll go back to Philly. My best friend is Ken QP Hamilton, the winningest coach in Philadelphia history. I played against him. We beat them at Germantown High to win the public twice. But I actually had one of my sons he coached at Ben Franklin. He had 4 public league champions. But see, people don't realize that I met Shabazz, Malcolm's wife. They changed the name of the school. It was an all-boys school. They changed the name to Malcolm X High. They had a sit-in at Ben Franklin. The police were there. This is my best friend, Coach Hamilton. They're going to change the name back to Ben Franklin High, because I spoke at the graduation when it was all boys and it was called Malcolm X. So I know about the history of what they went through trying to change the name, because his Malcolm X's wife came down and honored them, changing the name to Malcolm X High School. But the powers that be in Philly, unfortunately, changed it back to Ben Franklin. And I have some things that I see that I grew up, because when I was playing ball, we wanted to stop the gangs. And that's what QP did. He got the different Poplar Street, Moroccans, the gangs, to play ball together at Ben Franklin High. And then we concerned African American athletes in action in '69. Walt Hazzard, Brahim Ahmadiyya, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is abracadabra, who was one of my teammates at Overbrook High School on 2 championship teams and also all public football. But he was instrumental in bringing back activism working with gangs when they came back in '69. So we named it African American Athletes in Action. And to be inclusive, we changed it to Concerned Athletes Working with Gangs. This is in the 60s and 69, 70. And then we included like Billy Cunningham, Melchione. There are a lot of white ball players that took part in our Concerned Athletes in Action to try to stop the violence. So that's where my history goes with in '69 working with gangs in Philly, and then transferring that to Concerned Athletes in Virginia Beach with Bobby Dandridge, and then doing it in Milwaukee when I was traded to Milwaukee. Now, I wasn't traded to Milwaukee. I'm going to give you some history. I was the first Kaepernick. I spoke out against Rizzo, who was the police chief. He was also the mayor, and I have a picture. I knew the Black Panthers office. I knew all the Black Panthers. I'm an activist. I'm a civil rights activist. Rizzo came to their office and made these black men get naked. And he had a leather jacket on with a pistol. I have a picture on my phone, and I sent it to all my kids and grandkids to let them know what Rizzo was like and how he treated blacks in Philly. So I call him the Gestapo. So 1971, they would not pay me or play me. They said that I was too militant. I was speaking out against police brutality. They would not pay me or play me. My wife was expecting. I did not have a job in December. Guess who gave me a job? The first black general manager in the NBA, Wayne Embry. So I went to work in the NBA in December. We sued the NBA. My classmate at Villanova named Richie Phillips, he was also the representative for the umpires. Richie Phillips was my attorney. We sued the NBA for the Sherman Antitrust Act. And the students, Temple students, and the old gang members met at the Spectrum, and they picked at the Spectrum against slavery. They would not trade me or play me. See, that's a plantation mentality. See, if you guys don't know it, they had Wilt Chamberlain territorial draft when he was in high school. So you're owned as property during the early days. And fellas, we didn't make that much money. So I'm going to stop there for a minute because people don't realize 10,000, I made the NBA All Rookie team. Did you hear what I just said? How much money did I just say?
10,000.
10,000.
Now watch this.
That's it.
I don't know if Bobby Dandridge came on your show, but even Billy Cunningham was a white boy, one of my best friends and my brother, Billy Cunningham, Gemini. He went to North Carolina and he said, Wally, I went down there and I said, he's from Erasmus in New York. He's been hanging with brothers, Connie Hawkins, Roger Brown, some of the greatest basketball players in New York. You know what he told me? Where the brothers at? They did not have any brothers in North Carolina till Charlie Scott.
Yep.
So I'm giving you a little background about how society was and the way we were treated, especially as ball players. Because Billy Cunningham, first round draft for the Philadelphia 76ers, made $12,500. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? We had to have summer jobs, fellas. We all worked. Billy Cunningham, Hal Greer, we worked for Atlantic Richfield doing clinics all over Delaware, New Jersey, Philly. We didn't make no money. And then when I tried to sue them because I had just won a world championship, I averaged 20 points against the Boston Celtics to dethrone the Celtics. I had 30, 10, and 8 the first game against Golden State. The championship game, I was the leading scorer. And on that team were 4 Hall of Famers: Al Greer, Chet Walker, Wilt Chamberlain, Billy Cunningham. I was the leading scorer. So when I come back to negotiate, they don't want to pay me. I was one of the guys. I'll give you the names: Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry, Chauncey Billups, Tony Parker, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Dennis Johnson. We are the only guards to average 20 points in the conference and finals. Did you hear the name of the guards I just named? They're some of the greatest guards that ever played. But I wasn't a scorer. I wasn't a scorer. I was known for playmaking, only averaged 13 points throughout the whole year, but you make your name in the playoffs. We dethroned the Boston Celtics after 8 years dynasty. Nobody could beat them. We finally beat them with a 68-13 record. We were named the NBA's greatest team for the first 40 years. The NBA's greatest, 68-13. So I'm very proud of that record. I'm very proud of that, Ryan, DK.
We are too. Listen, we're very happy about that. Because look, see, at this point, it's just like, you know what? We just pretty much as spectators right now. We're supposed to be asking questions. We just mouths wide open. And we talk about some of the greatest teams, boy. Y'all had it. And this is what people don't understand. Boston had a stranglehold on the NBA. Now, this is after the Minneapolis. This is after the Minneapolis Lakers had their dynasty before they moved to LA. Boston was next up. And here's a question I have for you. When you talk about playing against Bill Russell and Casey Jones, Sam Jones, and Satch, you know, you played against some of the greatest players there. And when you talk about how they dominated, it was only really 2 teams that actually beat them in the middle of their stride. You guys are one, and the St. Louis Hawks were the other one with Big Bob Pettit. No one else really beat these guys when they were there. They were one of the toughest teams. And this is one thing I got to give Red Auerbach. Red lived in DC. A lot of people don't know that. Red lived in DC. So he saw a lot of those guys that went to the pretty much played at the black colleges, like your pretty much like Jack. I'm sorry. They called him
Sam Jones.
Sam Jones was one, but then you got to look at who he had in DC because he couldn't get Elgin Baylor. He knew Elgin when he was young. Him and John Thompson.
Yes, he did.
Big John Thompson and Elgin Baylor. And from what the story I heard was he wanted Elgin Baylor, but because you guys had territorial drafts on coast, he was stuck on the West Coast or whatnot at that time. So Baylor and people talk about Kevin Durant being that dude out of DC. No disrespect to UKD, but you ain't touching Elgin Baylor. Most folks didn't get to see him in his prime, but that dude was a walking bucket. But
a monster.
But
a monster. Now I'll give you some background on Boston. Because when you talk about what Red Auerbach did was the first thing he did was Bill Russell. I'm going to tell you who doesn't get credit. There's a guy named Casey Jones. Now, I'm a basketball player, so I watch Casey Jones, and I model my game off of him. They were champions in high school, San Francisco, the Olympics, and Celtics for 8 years. He is defender. Their team was so good. When I went to Villanova, I asked my coach, Jack Kraft, could we wear black Converses? Even though I'm a Philly boy, I love their team. Satch, Woody Salisbury, Willie Knowles. Now, I'm going to tell you some great ones. They had maybe 8 or 9 Hall of Famers. Now, I'm going to give you the names. Bill Sharman, John Havlicek. John Havlicek was one of the greatest Hall of Fame New York barbers. Tommy Heinsohn. I could give you the names of Hall of Famers. And Will Chamberlain said that. He said, I'm not beating Bill Russell. I'm beating Boston Celtics. They have all these Hall of Famers. We finally got a team to compete. Now, in history again, it was the first time you had 10 blacks starting in a championship game. Our team against Boston. And in history, that is very, very important because people don't know this. When I came out of Villanova, I was drafted by Detroit Pistons by the first black who played in the NBA, Earl Lloyd. Earl Lloyd, every time I saw him, I would hug him. He drafted me to Detroit. And then I was traded to the Baltimore Bullets, where I was with one of the greatest centers that never gets credit either, Walt Bellamy. You guys talk about Atlanta.
Okay, I know about
Walt Bellamy,
Oh, we know
Walt
about
had the Bill, Bill Bridges. I'm talking about Atlanta had a squad. Lou Hudson. Y'all know basketball now.
Mr. Wali.
Yeah.
So you know Lou Hudson, God rest his soul. So we lived off of Camp Creek Parkway on the backside of Enon Road. Lou Hudson and Claude Humphrey, God rest his soul, one of the greatest defensive ends of all time. They both lived behind my grandmother's house. So I got to meet both of them. And I didn't think about it. As a child, you don't think about it. It's like, okay, grandma was like, hey, this is Claude Humphrey. I met him cutting his grass. I met sweet Lou Hudson just coming at, speaking to my grandmother and stuff like that. I was like, and she was like, he used to play for the Hawks. And ignorant as I was as a little 5-6-year-old, oh, okay. Now I look back at it, it's like, damn, I literally
he's one of the great ones.
I talk to royalty.
So, yeah, well, see, I knew him in college. I played against him in the Holiday Festival in New York with Archie Clark, was with Minnesota. And we beat them because the guy that lives in Atlanta now, played for Atlanta, Jim Washington. As I said before, Jim Washington, we call him Sky King, he played with me at Villanova, and we co-authored a book when we played for the Sixers, but he was in Atlanta Hawk, and he still lives in Atlanta. But we talk about the importance of what we did during those times. Walt Bellamy, Lou Hudson, Jim Washington. See, I'll give you Andrew Young, Martin Luther King, all of what's happening down there. Those guys were involved in civil rights. Same thing would happen with us in Philadelphia. We marched. We spoke out against police brutality. Now, I told you before, I was the first Kaepernick because I had a general manager named Don Jordan from West Point. He sent a flunky to tell me to cut my hair. They didn't like me coming to the game with dashiki. See, I wore kabubas. Kabuba is a long African robe. So when I went to games with my fro, dashiki, and I'm speaking again against the Gestapo, the mayor and police chief, they said I was too militant. Now, what that guy did to me, Don Jordan, when I got hurt, he put in the paper that I was malingering. In other words, I wasn't coming back until I was right. I had a chip bone in my knee. But this guy put in the paper that he thought that I was malingering, that I wouldn't come back. So that led up to me getting out of Philly. Even though I was born there, high school, college, pro, then people did not like me talking about Rizzo and the police being the Gestapo, because that's the way we were treated back then. Still being treated that way now. So I let you guys know some history about why I went through that and why I spoke out. It cost me a lot, but you got to stand up for something or you'll fall for anything.
That's my favorite line.
Malcolm X.
My line.
All day. See,
yeah.
See, and here's the crazy thing. We've had, like I said, we've had a lot of guests through here, and we've heard a lot of history because, my uncle, Dr. Melvin Pender Jr. Shout out to Uncle Mel. He was one of the ones who put us in touch with one of your good friends, Mr. Larry played with you at Villanova. You guys are, just think about it. Y'all are Hall of Famers at Villanova University, Catholic school at that. You, Mr. Livers, another guest that we got coming up that that he was pretty much the original Debo. He was the original food bully at your school. Shout out to, football legend, Mr. Billy Joe. Won a championship with the Jets. We got him coming on later on this year. He's going to talk about his days being an AFL rookie. But he told us about the stories of how he used to raid you guys' fridges up at Villanova back in the day. Y'all don't need that. Go ahead and get that to me.
Yeah, I love Juice. I'm so proud of him, what he did. But when I went to school, fellas, George Raveling from D.C. saw me play and said, because I had a few offers to go other places to go to college, but he said you can get off out of Philly by going to a campus life, because I could have gone to Temple or St. Joe. But here's what happened. See, during that time, there were only 1 or 2 blacks on those teams. My godfather for my oldest son, John Tiller, was the first black. He's 6'9". He's the first black to play at St. Joe. When I went to Villanova, there were only, I had George Leffridge, who played with John Thompson at Archbishop Carroll on that great team. We were 3 blacks. When I went to campus, you had to wear coat and tie to class, coat and tie to eat. It was all male. So I wasn't Catholic, but I had such a tremendous education. It's an Augustinian. Villanova is just below Ivy League. So when people used to tell me this, I'm going to tell y'all guys this, because people do this to us. I'm going to give you why I'm kind of like the gift. I'm 83. They would tell us, y'all ain't nothing but dumb jocks. Brawn and no brains. You cannot do the work of Villanova. Now, you don't know how. That's why I made sure I went to prep school. But that's how we were treated as Negroes. I'm going to give this to you again, fellas. We're called Negroes, dumb jocks. This is at Villanova. Now, when I went to school, if there's 3,000 students, there's only 20 of us. Billy Joe was from Coatesville, the only black on the team, football team. Then we had Frank Budd, fastest human in the 100, Otis Drayton, Larry Lyver. We had the best track teams on the East Coast, and we had Olympians on that team. So I was around some great people, but I said again, I needed that to get away from Philly, to be on the campus. And for 4 years, I had an African-American roommate named James Scott from Rome, New York. He was in the ROTC on campus. He was an engineer, Peace Corps, brilliant young man. So for 4 years, I'm in a room with a guy who was a student, a real student. So it really rubbed off on me, fellas. You know, I got my academia together. But I wanted y'all to know that, because times have changed when you talk about now. When I played against West Virginia, Rod Thorne was there. I'm talking about the 60s.
Wow.
They beat us in West Virginia, no blacks. Do you know what the people did in West Virginia? They sang Bye Bye Blackbird. Rod Thorne came in our dressing room. Rod Thorne came in our dressing room and told us, hey man, I apologize. Now, Rod Thorne is a very good friend of mine. He became an executive in the NBA office, and he played in the pros. But I played against, then we finally beat him in the regionals. After we beat John Thompson in Providence, we beat NYU, and then we beat West Virginia. But I'm giving you stories where when I went to 60, when I was a sophomore, I went to Maryland to play at Cole Fieldhouse, where we beat NYU, and Providence. I'm trying to think who else we beat. We lost to Wake Forest. But do you know, when I went there, they would not let us in the hotel because I was black. There was only 2 of us on the team. No, 3. Hubie White, Jordan. So it's a story of timing, of what's happening in society. Because when we played in Memphis, the guys in the hotel said, don't go out. We lost. No, we may have beat them. But we went to Memphis. There was no blacks playing on Memphis team back in the 60s. So I'm giving you a sort of a historical background of when you play at these schools, there weren't any blacks. And now the teams are completely black. But I'm just giving you a thing of what we went through when we traveled down south. And when I went to see my brother at A&T when I was 15, White Fountain, my mother and I go to the restaurant. They said, no, you got to eat in the back. My mother said, now I'm 15. I'm going to tell you where I'm from now. I used to be in gangs. I said, my mother ain't eating in no damn kitchen. Do you know what we did? My mother said, get in this car. They lynching blacks down here. Now I'm giving you the 50s now. Any of y'all ever heard of Emmett Till?
Yes.
What they did to Emmett Till?
Very well.
Emmett Till was a little 15-year-old boy in the South. They said whistle. He was the one they beat up and threw in the the river, and his mother kept the casket open because it was so horrible what they did to this teenage boy because they said he whistled. So when I'm growing up, I'm having a fear of white people not only lynching you, killing you, you can't say nothing. I wanted to go to movie, fellas, in Greensboro. You had to sit in the balcony. So I'm giving you something as a 15-year-old what I had to experience at a white fountain. So my brother is part of A&T, Joe Howe, Al Addles, Vince Miller, who coached Ben Franklin. They were all teammates down. I'm 15. I never seen guys run and play this good. They were part of the sit-in, the Woolworth sit-ins. So I'm giving you a little history about what I experienced as a teenage kid from North. I ain't never experienced I got a white fountain. You can't eat. You got to eat in the kitchen. You know, I'm thinking I'm cold. I must get in this car. I'm thinking of some gangster. Man, she said, get in this car. You know, we went down. We didn't stop and eat. You know, I drove just when I'm 15, see my brother at A&T in Greensboro. But just give you a little background of what I experienced to what's happening in our society even now. Even here, where I've been a principal of Dunbar Elementary School, African American, Little River, Haitian American, Riverside, Cuban American. You say, how can y'all be a principal of 3 schools? It's an after-school program called the Heat Academy. Pat Riley and Billy Cunningham, before Pat Riley took the team over, had me be a principal of 3 after-school programs, utilizing ball players like Dwayne, Glenn Rice, all the great ball players before we won the championship with Kareem. No, not what I'm talking about. Shaq, excuse me. We won a championship when Shaq came. And then unfortunately we lost so many games that they cut our salaries with the Heat for 10%. And I'd been there as vice president of community relations and a scout. They called 19 of us in and dismissed us. So I didn't get a chance to win 2 more rings with LeBron, or I would have had 2 more rings. So I'm just giving you a story about what happens in when you have we weren't winning no games. When Shaq left, we were the worst team in the NBA. The Heat. I'm talking about the Heat. And then that's how my job was what they call it, terminated. They didn't say they fire you, they terminated your position. So that's how I got back into working with
saying it.
Yeah. So that's where I got back into working with what I was doing all along, Concerned Athletes in Action. Now we changed it to a nonprofit 501c3 training called Shoot for the Stars Institute. We are an institute. Since 1969, we have been working in the community since 69, not only here, but Concerned Athletes in Action was in Virginia Beach, Denver with my brother, with Fatty Taylor, played with Denver, San Antonio with Bill Franklin and George Gervin. We had Concerned Athletes in Action in maybe 6 different states, but it started in Philadelphia in 69. Nate Bowman played with the world champion Knickerbockers. They were at that conference in 69 with Hazard, Michael Jordan, and Brahim Ahmed. We went down to see what African-American athletes could do to change things in our community. So guys like Tiny Archibald, Bob McCullough, Pee Wee Kirkland, Tom Hoover, Nate Bowman, they started Each One Teach One in New York. The same time we started African American Athletes in Action. But we changed it to Concerned Athletes in Action to include whites. And then we changed it. We became an institute, Shoot for Stars Institute. Now, Ryan, you had a chance to meet all those guys sitting at the table?
Yes,
all
sir.
those guys still come to our events that we do to silence the violence in Philly. Ollie Taylor played for the Hawks, Trailblazers, Jazz. You had Clarence Brookins played with Temple, All-American, played with Cleveland. You had Stretch. You had Bill Baggett sitting there, played for the Denver Nuggets, tried out with the Sixers. He played out there. And of course, you had Coach Hamilton. You had Sonny Hill, who played in the Eastern League and played for Central State. If people don't know, guys like that, you know. So I'm just giving a little background on why it's so important for young people to know about the history of Philadelphia, but also the history of what happened to athletes in the 50s, 60s, 70s. We made that game. I am so glad these guys are making that much money because it's on the backs of guys like Wilt and Bill Russell, were the only ones to make 100 grand. But what they taught us was very important, especially Wilt Chamberlain. He became an entrepreneur. The reason why he left the 76ers, because he was promising ownership, part ownership, and they wouldn't give it to him. So our team was young. We thought we could have won a few more championships. We were all young guys on that team that won in 67. And then we lost again in 68 after Martin Luther King was assassinated. I voted not to play, but Boston was good enough to beat us. We had them 3-1. And they came back and beat us. They came back and beat us in 68. Billy Cunningham, though, fractured his wrist. And we didn't have all our players, but that's another controversy where Boston mayor and Philly mayor said you need to play because they're rioting. That's when they killed Martin Luther King.
I want to ask you about that.
Oh, people don't know about what's happening.
No, I want to ask you about that because
he just be rolling it.
You rolling with it. See, you answer a majority of the questions that we had. I got to stop you on this one because I got to exactly. Look, he's answered majority of the questions, but here's a question I have for you.
Yes,
because
I ain't come to play
at the time, because think about it. At the time, I'm sure you met Mr. Hank Aaron, God rest his soul, at that time, and Hank actually talked about not playing or taking a moment of silence, and they hosed those guys when that happened too, because he was really upset about that when they were in Cincinnati, and he was trying to break the record. During that time when Dr. King got assassinated, you talk about Baltimore rioting, you talk about the South, certain parts of the South that rioted, and then you talk about Philly, New York, these places that were rioting at this time. As a Black athlete, what was your responsibility to the community to try to comfort these folks during a time like that and telling them, hey, we can't destroy our communities the way that you're doing this. We got to go about it a whole nother way because we got to still live here at the end of the day. How did that impact the community with you guys just being able to have a voice in the community with the folks that you were living around at that time?
Well, it's such a platform you have to use. I used it because I knew people are impressionable identification with athletes, entertainers, actors, musicians. They had impressionable identification. So when you say something, when legends speak, people listen. Now, I'm going to give you something that is very important because during those times we were marching. I'll give you Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael. I'll give you Dick Gregory. Now, we were out in society with these people marching all along. But when this happened, we were saying we can play. I mean, our mental state of I voted not to play. There are a couple of guys that voted not to play. Chet Walker and I voted. Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain met. But the two mayors met and they said they're rioting. And if we don't play, it'll get worse. So I can understand that, to continue the game, to try to get their mind off of it. But afterwards, we were in the community trying to tell people, let's don't tear your community up. Let's build back up peacefully. Because that's what Martin Luther King was about, peaceful. But I'm telling you, when I saw what they did to the Panthers, what the police were doing to our people in Philly, become more, and I'm going to use the word that they used on me. I was a militant. I'm militant because I have a platform to speak what's wrong. I mean, what y'all doing to our people in the streets, how the police accosted you. Now, everybody that I grew up with in Philly been stopped by the police. Every ball player, anybody I ever grew up with said one time in their life, I played for the Sixers in 76. I came back from Detroit Pistons. I'm going to my mother's house in West Philly. I had a a hat on, sort of a kufi.
Mhm.
The police, I'm going to my mom's house. Police grabbed me, put me in a paddy wagon, put a handgun. I said, sir, I just came from practice. My name is Wali Jones. He said, well, you look like the guy that just robbed this guy in a taxi. Do you know they had me in a paddy wagon and took me down to where the man was robbed at? You know, I was so mad, and I knew I didn't want to react because I know how they beat up. A lot of my friends have gotten beaten by police in Philly. The paddy wagon's gonna take me back to my car. I was so
Mhm.
mad, I told them no. It was about 8 blocks. But I walked back. But I'm giving you examples of what we go through as in Philly. Now, people don't understand that because I lived in Norfolk, I lived in Detroit, I lived in Utah, I lived
Oof.
in Milwaukee. I lived in different places around the country. But people don't understand what happened in the 50s in Philly because a
And
lot of the police officers were from down south.
and
They
you know
don't
what's crazy?
understand. They don't understand because, um,
We
as I said
understand we're
before,
veterans.
yeah,
We're
that
vets.
50s and
So we've lived around the country. And I
Well,
lived
yeah,
in that
we
New
affect.
England area that you're talking about. I'm just telling you that now. I lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, 30 minutes outside of Boston.
Hey,
And I will
Ryan.
tell you to this day, it is still, and I mean, if I offend some people, I'm sorry. It's still one of the most racist places on this country. Say what you want. If you go to Boston and you're not the right shade, you're gonna get treated a certain way. It's still
Well,
like that in parts of Boston. Nothing has
well,
changed.
I know Bill Russell. He hated the way the people treat him, but I knew about Boston racism because when I went to the game, when I grew my fro, they called me gorilla. They threw a banana at me, nigga. I'm talking about Boston, man. You know what I
I,
mean?
not much has
My
changed.
best friend, Susan Summons, the great coach down here at Community College. She's in Six Hall of Fame. She lived in Roxborough. And she
Mm,
said them people up there treated her blacks in Boston. Uh, I remember, I'll never forget this guy put a flag. It's in all the newsreels about what they did where they were protesting, blacks were protesting. This guy was actually going to stab a guy with
with the
the
flag, with the
flag,
American flag. He was the
with the
season
American
ticket
flag.
holder
Yeah,
for
you know what I'm
Boston.
talking about.
Yep.
So I'm going to get on another topic because sometimes I see what's happening in our state of the union, and it's very frightening, young men, about what's happening in our society. But one thing that I like what some of these athletes are doing, um, when I worked for the Miami Heat, Dwayne, Glenn, a lot of guys, Cleve Askins, a lot of great ball players that I worked with when I worked those 20 years there, they had foundations. And I was so proud of these young athletes that have foundations to help people. And so I like what LeBron does. I mean, I'm proud of Dwayne and Shaq. I mean, I know these guys personally that they're about helping people. So I'm glad that overall, if we get more entertainers, actors, and the power they
Yep.
have with their finances to do things, even owning the team, I think it's so important. But right now, today, fellas, when we talk about ball, I've been enjoying it. It's a different game, fellas. We had a hand check. We're very physical. The game was playing from within. I had Walt Bellamy, Wilt. I had Darryl Dawkins, Moses Malone, Kareem
Mm.
Abdul-Jabbar, Bob Lanier.
Moses.
I played with the greatest centers ever that nobody in the NBA history had played with. So I was able to be very aggressive outwardly because I had those giants behind me. Now that's the game with those guys, fellas, was played within. We would go in, then out and cut. Now the game
Yeah.
is wide open. The game is what it was
Uh,
when I played in Utah. When I went to Utah at 33 years old, I was
that's what I
retired.
was going to ask
I was working in Virginia Beach with Concerned Athletes in Action. My attorney said, "You want to play anymore?" I said, "Yeah." I went out there in an exhibition game and they signed me. I was 33 years old. And they signed me with
you.
the
Wow.
Utah Stars with Moses Malone, out of high school.
Young Moses.
Yeah,
Young
And,
Moses.
okay.
and let me tell you something about the ABA. Well, the ABA was just like the NBA is what the ABA is when I played in 75. They're 3-pointers. They didn't have 3-pointers in the NBA when I was in Utah in 75. Dr. J was shooting threes. George McGinnis, Gervin. I'm talking about some great, great ball players. So when I played in the ABA, that 1 year was a great experience for me, even at the age of 33. Because I went out there, me and Moses stayed in the hotel because I didn't want to bring my family out there. They were in Virginia Beach. But it's the experience of the style of play is wide open. You go down 48 3-pointers. If a big man or you run down court and shot a 3 without waiting for your big man to come down, they take you out. Now, when I see Steph Curry, it's amazing the way these guys can shoot that rock. They can shoot that rock. But it's interesting game is not as physical because we had hands.
Wait a minute. I gotta stop you because you on the guard. See, most folks don't know that Wali is a point guard. So he's one of these guys that definitely had one of the greatest, not just slick shots. He was able to distribute the ball beautifully. But there's another point guard. Now you keep mentioning Virginia, and we gotta throw his name out there. Mr. Bobby Dandridge talked about him when he was on a week and a half ago. Mr. Pee Wee Kirkland, legend, ball game legend that should have been in the NBA, but he turned it down. But we ain't gonna get on that. But talk a little bit about the legendary game that you guys had at Lewisburg Penitentiary when you took a team down there and played against them. So
I'm gonna explain something to you. World Be Free and ML Carr played at Guilford College. My brother's son, Bobby Jr., played much later after him at Guilford College. So I'm working with Concerned Athletes in Action in Philly, and a friend of ours is in jail, started Concerned Athletes in Action in Lewisburg. Now, we had already been working at Gratisford, Glen Mills. We had been working in correctional facilities for the past 20 years before we went up to Lewisburg. We took a team up there because I heard Pee Wee was up there. We took a team up there. They had 15-minute quarters. Guess who was there watching the game? ML Carr was a prison guard.
Yep.
Listen to me. ML Carr played for the Boston Celtics. ML Carr said, Wally, I saw you play against Pee Wee Kirkland. He's telling World Be Free, because World Be Free, one of my buddies, because my last year with the Sixers, they picked me up from Detroit Pistons, and my last year was 76. So we have World Be Free, Freddie Carter, Doug Collins, McGinnis, Jelly Bean Bryant, Steve Mick. We had a squad. And when I talk about World Be Free, we had such a great team. I'm backing up a little because that was my last year. We had a squad to really win the Eastern Conference. We had the dumbest coach in the world, the way they played.
Y'all
because
loaded.
Freddie Carter and Doug Collins shot all the time. Steve Mix was all-star. George McGinnis. We had Harvey Catchings. We had Jelly Bean. We had Darryl Dawkins. They shot all the time. So George wouldn't rebound. We lost. You want to know who we lost to? Bob McAdoo and the Buffalo Braves.
Oh,
do you remember Randy? Anybody Bob remember McAdoo. Randy Smith? Do you remember Randy Smith?
Heard of his name, yes, sir.
Randy Smith was one of the baddest small forwards to play. Ernie D. Gregorio. But Bob McAdoo killed us. They put Clyde Lee on him. Big, tall dude, slow as molasses, and he lit us up. But the dumbest coach. Well, I'll go back to what I'm talking about. Pee Wee Kirkland good. I'm going to tell you why this is very important. He was so instrumental when he got out to help so many kids. I would go up to New York, the Pee Wee Kirkland Foundation with Tiny Archibald, Bob McCullough, Tom Hoover. I'm naming all these great New York guys that run the program up there. And he does so many wonderful things for kids up there. So when he did get out of Lewisburg, Bill Baggett, who you met, Ryan, at the thing in Delaware, we went to New York to his party. Fine women. Excuse me.
No, it's okay. Listen, it wasn't bad. You can say that.
It was beautiful.
We got folks that want to hear it.
Yeah, look here. It was a wonderful party. But I just appreciated him. He really appreciated us because of how we kept in touch. We kept in touch with him. I would call him. You know, we kept in touch afterwards. Now, I didn't know him when he played with Bobby in Norfolk State, but I knew him afterwards, going to New York and seeing him like that. So he had done some things in Lewisburg. He was publicized in a lot of newspapers of dropping 50, 60. And they had some guys who could play. I'm going to say something about prison because I work in youth correctional facilities. I see a lot of these kids in jail, man. I mean, what y'all doing here? Good as y'all could play. Or I was in the wrong place, the wrong time. So when you look at a lot of athletes, he had some ball players with him in jail. Unfortunately, like I tell when I do my clinics, you have to make good choices and good decisions so you don't wind up in negative places. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did, because a lot of folks that aren't true basketball fans, they don't realize Pee Wee Kirkland scored 100 points twice in the prison league. Understand how good he was.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Dandridge talked about how they were playing in the CIAA tournament or whatnot, championship. He said, I had the MVP locked up. And he said, freaking Pee Wee stole it from me in 5 minutes. Literally stole the MVP from him in 5 minutes. That was how talented he was. And, you know, it's just a shame. But, you know, the best part about Mr. Kirkland's story, like you said, he took his experiences and have been helping a lot of young men not make those same choices. But when you can turn down $25,000 at the time and say, man, I get $300,000 in a day, go somewhere.
Yeah,
you can tell the Bulls that. And Norm Van Lien was a good guard. Don't get it twisted. They said he ate his lunch at that tryout.
Yeah.
Literally.
And,
but
you know,
but for you, and I want to ask you something. It's just something for me because I grew up, like I said, I love history. My man K Dub is a ball fan too. His uncle worked at Temple.
Yeah,
but
love basketball.
Where you from? Where you from, KG? Oh, both of y'all from Atlanta. Oh, both y'all, yeah. I know about Nob Hill. I know about Surrey Park. I was there. I'm gonna give you some history. I was there when Hank Aaron hit the 415.
715.
I was there when Michael Jordan played in the Georgia Dome. Do y'all remember? 32,000 people.
That's a bad game. He broke my heart that night, and I love Jordan. Man.
I was there. It's the biggest attended game. I think it was 32,000 people.
At the playoffs.
They only use half the dome. They blocked half of it off. I remember that. Yeah, man. That was all right.
But my question is this, because you've been, like I said, we appreciate you just spending time with us tonight. And we always talk about the Philly legends. There's a Philly legend that I feel as if don't get talked about enough. They only talk about him. They only talk about him passing away. That's Hank Gathers. What was it like seeing Hank Gathers coming up in North Philly at the time over in the Raymond Rosen Project homes, balling, doing what he was doing, and just being a dominant player in the city of Philadelphia and just having his life cut short? What was that like, just knowing what that potential was like? And I know you had run-ins with him.
Not only that, I'm going to give you something. Yankovic was his coach at Dobbins. My daughter ran track when Hank and Bo Kimball, Hank, I'm trying to think of the other guard. It's a guard that played at Dobbins with Hank Gathers, and he played pro. It slips my mind for the moment. But we just inducted him into the Hall of Fame. He played for the Sixers at one time. He played in the NBA. But I give you a little background. When you saw a guy like Hank with his physical attributes as a high school ball player. I had a high school ball player built as powerful as him named Ralph Hayward on our championship team. He played with my brother when they won a championship, and I won 2 championships with him in Overbrook. Physically, for a teenager to be built that powerful. Now, they had great teams at Dobbins, but when they went to LA with Bo Kimball and them and that style of play, it was exciting. They brought a East Coast style like Walt Hazzard brought to the UCLA. Walt Hazzard was Walt the Wizard because the East Coast style he brought to UCLA when they won 30-0. When Hank and Bo went out there, Paul Westhead, I'm trying to make sure I got the right coach.
Oh, you got the right coach because Paul Westhead is a Philly guy. A lot of people forget about that.
Yeah, now here's what happened.
Got him fired, unfortunately.
Yes, they did. Yes, he did. Yes,
Magic
he did.
Johnson got him fired.
But he had a style of play of running and putting up points. You don't know how proud I was of those 2 young brothers. Of course you're proud when you from a place, y'all know this. Hey man, I'm from Philly. Yeah. And that's what guys say. I'm from Philly, man. And you're proud of anybody from Philly, whatever they do, wherever they at. I was so proud of those young men. And his death was so shocking, to see a man that physical and to die that young. He has so much more to offer. But, things in life, they make you realize life's short. We're not here to stay. We're here to play until Judgment Day. And it's how much you play, your creativity, Ryan, KG, your creativity is so important to do what you can while you're here. That's the Creator's gift to you. Your gift to the Creator is what you do with this gift. And you guys are doing a good job. I love your art, your creativity, and your presentation because I do a show also. Sports Inside and Out. And I'm going to invite y'all, man, because I got to invite y'all to come on the show. I'm serious, man. I've been doing this for about.
Appreciate that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you got a good format. I like the bird cage. I like what you're doing. So I got other guys that I think you like to hear on your show, even Coach Hamilton. I mean, he has a story to tell you about the greatest high school coach, first black McDonald's coach to win the McDonald's All-American game. He's one of the first in doing a lot. But one of the biggest things he did, fellas, he's an educator. He brought Black history to the public school system at Ben Franklin. They didn't have Black history. Wow. I'm giving you some things where I talked to him. I said, man, you should write a book. The stuff he did at Ben Franklin to change the mentality of the North Philadelphia schools. Because when you went to Gratz, Edison, or Ben Franklin, you come there for a war. I mean, cats were afraid to go to North Philly. But we learned one thing. They respect you. And you got a passport. So I could go all over the city after winning track, cross country. We won cross country championship, track championship. So people begin to know you get a passport. But before then, man, you go in a certain area. Hey, man, what are you doing over here? Now it's a little different now. That's why I started Silence the Violence. 1999, there were killings at high schools here. Northwestern, Central, Miami High. Now I named guys like Udonis, Keon Dooling, Steve Blake. Right, these are pros, James Jones, that came out of Miami. So what me and my partner did with Tournament of Champions, we put on the best high school basketball and football games. And what we did, we went to the high schools and asked the high school ball players to wear bells, for whom the bell tolls, to stop the violence. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, we marched all over the street to stop the killings here in 99. So I was invited to Washington, D.C. by President Bill Clinton and given an award for the initiative of Silence the Violence. 1999, I went to D.C. Now, what I'm doing now for the past 5 years, the same exact thing in Philly, silence the violence. Using these legends of the city of brotherly love to talk to these kids to don't get involved with this senseless killing. And so I'm doing what I did in 69, and I'm doing it now because that's my calling. That's my ministry. Save the children.
That's full circle. Full
And
circle.
you know, like you were saying, and I moved, like I said, I ended up moving. Like I said, I grew up in between Atlanta, Georgia, and Jacksonville, Florida. So I already understand when you talk about Florida. I was in Duval County, home of John, the birthplace and home before he moved to Philly of your Philly legend, Mr. John Chaney, who used to coach you at one point, and you say he used to weigh you out on the court. Tell a story about
Well,
old Coach John Chaney.
he was my hygiene
That's
teacher.
my other question.
He would take Walt Hazzard and I in the gym and beat us up. I mean, this guy was a outstanding basketball player, not only in college but pro. He played in the Eastern League. But I'm saying for a man that you say from down Florida, because there's a lot of good ball players that I have seen because I've been here since '88, and I've seen some outstanding athletes, and not only in basketball, but we put on the football tournaments. The best of the football players come out of here that are going to Alabama. They're going to
Hold up. I
Clemson.
gotta wait a minute. No. I gotta stop you on that. Now I played up in North Florida. Now that's personal for you to say that. Now you ain't gonna do that up in here. No, sir. They have a lot of great football players that come out of Dade. But hey, the toughest boys come up out of Northeast Florida, Duval County. You talk about Gainesville. Hey, I'm a Northeast guy. That's why I played ball at. So we were
Y'all had some great
with them boys down there in South Florida. See, oh man, Brian Dawkins. Matter of fact, I give you 2 Eagles. Here's another one that you know. Harold Carmichael out of Raines High School. That school alone, since pretty much they've been around since 1960. The only black high school that's been around that long, and they put more than 50 guys in the NFL. 2 of them Hall of Famers.
We had quite a few numbers, but one thing I learned about ball players that were good in Florida. Some of them,
yes,
a lot of the Blaze brothers, Peter Warwick. Yep. I don't know whether you ever heard of Peter Warwick. Peter Warwick not only could play football, but he could play basketball. He could play basketball.
Remember this. Everybody knows this, and I'm
football and basketball.
I gotta stand up for Trouble. Everybody knows him as Trouble, but he was one of the best football players, and he was on the opposite side of Peter Warwick. And Peter started to shine. Peter was already talented. He started to shine when Lavernius Coles ended up having to leave Florida State at that point, because that was who was on the other side of your boy Peter Warwick, Lavernius Coles, out of Jacksonville. So well, it is, and I'm just joking when I say that. I respect those boys down there, because and this is my thing, I wanted to move to Atlanta, but things didn't work out for high school for me, and growing up in between there and getting to play high school ball in Florida, the same way that basketball and boxing is in Philly, that's how football is down in Florida. Like, you understand it, you see it. When you
I've seen it since '88. I've seen some of the greatest ball players down in Florida. I'm going to show you a film. I'm gonna text you a film of our ball players this year from Florida.
Okay.
And how we had them go visit Joe DiMaggio Hospital. I'm going to April 6th with our basketball players. But I want you to hear how these young men talk. This guy, Wesley Frater, who I've been with for 27 years, we've been putting on Tournament of Champions, the best Broward, best Dade football team, basketball and football. But what he's done, I'm his education research director. We do symposiums with these guys, but I'm going to show you a film of how these young men talk and how intelligent these young guys are that are going to some of the top colleges. And that's what we're trying to breed, scholar athletes. That's what we're trying to do.
That's what you have to do. But the way that NIL is coming into play with these kids now is when you have kids that come out of these environments, and I can speak on this because, like I said, I know what it's like coming out of Florida, and you understand how these kids live. You see it. And when you are coming out playing football or whatnot, you have some kids who understand the academic side of it. Some of them don't. They don't get it until they get to college. But now that you're able to pay players legally at this point, it's really tough for a kid that's never had money ever in his life, or female. Just saying, these athletes, when you put an NIL deal in front of somebody, $250,000, they've never seen even $30,000 in a year, and you put that much in front of a kid, the academic side of it, it really doesn't. It gets pushed to, sadly, it gets pushed to the back burner because the kid is thinking, I got to get this money and I have to survive. And
I agree.
And it's sad because we need people like yourself, Wally, to talk to a lot of these young athletes, not just males, females too. And we gotta let them understand, because eventually the game stops. Sometimes you don't even get past college because you might blow your knee out. You might have something to happen. And that's the part that most people don't understand. And that was what I respected about Coach John Thompson when he was at Georgetown. He said, we don't talk basketball in this locker room. We read current events. We talk about what's going on in society. Yeah. John Chaney did the same thing, you know, and looking at what you're doing, and Coach Walt Hazard was the same way too. It's an honor to be able to listen to some of the stories, because you got a ton of them. But the one thing I got to show the folks tonight, and I do this for everybody that I can, I got to bring up some highlights of Mr. Wally Jones when he was out there giving folks buckets back in the day for the 76ers in his prime when he was killing it. So fair use, fair use, fair use. This is Mr. Wally Jones with the Sixers back in the day.
Oh, watch the hook. Watch the hook shot.
Watch the hook.
On that legendary parquet floor in Boston.
That's right.
Watch the hook.
There's old Sam Jones. He giving it bucket.
Yeah, I had to give it to him.
You had to. So we gonna get, and I got one more thing we gonna do, and then we gonna wrap it up, because definitely we are loving it. So, Mr. Jones, the question I have for you is this: who was the toughest player that you got to play against?
All right,
That's a good one.
Tiny Archibald and Calvin Murphy. I didn't mind playing Oscar or Wes, Dave Bing, Earl Monroe, Walt Frazier. I didn't mind that, because I could get up and beat and hang with them. Tiny Archibald and Calvin Murphy were the fastest dudes that I had to play. And it was tough keeping in front of them guys, man. But they were the toughest for me, Tiny Archibald and Calvin Murphy. There's another guy I played in the ABA against, Matt Calvin. He was a little guard that played with Denver Nuggets championship team. I'm trying to think. Oh, he played at USC, but he was a little guard. He was tough. But they were the toughest. But fellas, I really appreciate you guys having me on. And I'm gonna talk to you guys.
It's only right. Go ahead, K-Dub. I'm sorry.
How was it getting that mural they made for you done in 23? How was your feelings that day?
Wow, good question. I'm gonna tell you what that meant to me, because my father was there, my sisters were there, maybe 300 community people who I've been working with all my life. To be honored in your neighborhood, where you work, where you play ball. Philadelphia is known for the most murals in the world. I've seen Dr. J, Ed Bradley. I don't know if you guys know who Ed Bradley was. Big time announcer.
60 Minutes.
60. There you go, brother. There y'all got it. You know, they're musicians. You know, they're musicians.
Grover Washington Jr.
Yeah, Grover Washington. Now, I know him very well. But I'm saying this, to have my
They're
mural up there,
yours.
it's an honor, man, because it represents what. And I told the people there that day, KG, I said, this is really you. I'm an Aquarius. I fit the form of my object. I'm a humanitarian. But that mural is all of you out there, all you people that reach out and try to help young people. It's my mother up there. It's my sisters. That represented. But when my father came on the court and spoke in a wheelchair, it was really hot that day, 107. The guy that had the art museum and the people to put up the mural, it cost money. So my pop comes out there. I wanted to raise money for Mantua community so we could do peer leadership. We already been doing clinics and camps there, but the mural was to raise money so we could do human development, peer leadership with the kids in that neighborhood. I grew up in West Philly, so it served its purpose. We had a lot of trainings there, camps there, right on that same court, and I'll be back this spring doing something. But the question is this: it's an honor, man, to have your name, your legacy. That's how I felt. My heart was filled that day with so many people out there, family and friends.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. I just knew it was special with your dad being there before. Like you say, you lost him.
Oh
So I know
yeah,
that's heavy on your heart. Just having him there
yeah.
to see that.
My brother from Denver came in with his family. My son from Atlanta came in. I'm talking about family. I grew up in that neighborhood. A lot of times they chase me from that neighborhood because no, I'm serious. My wife lived down the
Yeah.
Black Bottom. I lived up the top. So I went down to see
Oh
my
man.
wife as a teenager. They would chase me home until they found out I played ball because I go down there and start playing ball with them. So I had a passport. But before then,
Yeah.
what you doing down here? They chased me home. I had to run about 8-10 blocks.
You got it, and you know what it did? It got those legs in shape. It got your wind
Hey,
up.
look, that was that
And
workout.
They got my cross country work in, brother. I'm a cross country guy. Hey man, I love you
Yeah.
guys, man. Appreciate you.
we appreciate you for coming through, Mr. Jones.
Appreciate you.
You once again, and I'll be catching you when you come up here. You said you'll be up here on the 13th, correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna send you my schedule so whenever you can make it, just come by and see what we do. But KG, am I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
Thanks a lot, brother.
K-Dub. It's all good.
K Dub. Yeah, that's why I want to get it right, man, because people don't say my name right. My name is Wali, not Wally.
Okay.
Wali.
Hey, look,
All right.
the legend, the legend can mess it up, but it's K-Dub. It's all good, man. I appreciate you
K
coming on
Dub,
to the
I
Perch.
like that, man. You brothers on time. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you for coming through, Wali Jones.
All right.
Mr.
Assalamu
Legend.
alaikum, my brothers.
Walaikum salam.
All right. Y'all
Right.
beautiful.
Yes, sir. That was one of the Philly legends, Mr. Wali Jones, who just pronounced it for us or whatnot. And having a legend like that come through and talk to us, that was a treat. And he didn't just talk about basketball; he talked about life. K-Dub.
Yeah, he talked about a lot of things, man.
What better way can we close the show like that?
An astute interview. It was very a pleasure to listen to his backstory, and he's a true legend. Not just a Hall of Famer, but a true legend. So I appreciate it.
When you look at it like this, Villanova Hall of Fame, NBA champion in '67 with Wilt, and he was an instrumental part of that. And then you look at not just the guards that have come through Philly. He's one. Mo Cheeks is the other one. Allen Iverson. Tyrese Maxey is the new one right now. But when you look at that, that's a lineage of guards that have come through Philly and have put in work. And then he pretty much was, like he said, Colin Kaepernick before Kaepernick, and he had what Craig Hodges had. Craig got blackballed after he did what he did with George Bush in the White House for talking about the issues that were going on. And for Mr. Jones to take a stand when it wasn't popular and no one talked about it says a lot about his character and being a stand-up guy.
It does.
So
It does. Like I say, excellent interview. Excellent interview.
well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be coming to you live again next week or whatnot. We're going to discuss a little bit. Maybe we might have a pop-up show this weekend because apparently Kirk Cousins is out of his mind right now with some of the stuff that he's doing. And now I think he's wavering under the pressure and he's getting ready to waive that trade clause because he's ready to go. So, hey, we'll help you pack your bags, my brother. And speaking of that, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate y'all for taking time out of the night to chill with us and also with the legend. But y'all got to pack y'all bags and y'all got to get up out of here. Because guess what? It's din time. It's dinner time tonight. So for K-Dub, myself, the historian, and the magnificent Birdcage crew that helps out and does great things behind the cameras, we appreciate you guys. We love y'all. And we will see you guys next week on Thursday in the Birdcage. Ghosts.